Guru.
Hello viewers, welcome to Digital Lessons. In this video, we are going to talk about one important poem, that is Abondoned. This poem was written by Dr. Surya Nasim. Before we start the lesson, let's go into the objectives of today's session. After watching this class, you will be able to understand the central idea of the poem. You will be able to identify the message conveyed by the poetess. You will also be able to read the poem with correct rhyme and rhythm. You will be able to critically appreciate the poem. Before we discuss the poem, let's have a look at the following pictures. Look at this picture. This picture talks about a news report which says a 7-day-old abandoned Jalandhar girl rescued by the residents of that particular place. Usually we come across such reports in newspapers regularly. Let's have a look at another picture. We also come across such pictures in newspapers where the infants or the small babies are abandoned on the roads or near the bushes or even in the dustbins. Look at this picture. Dear children, this is another news report, and the news report says a baby found abandoned in Kendrapada, which is located in the Karnataka state. Look at the title and the subtitles of this news report. This is yet another report which says that a baby girl abandoned in Telangana's Kondareddipalli village, and the baby was rescued by the residents of that particular place. Dear children, now let us look at the details of another news report. An abandoned newborn baby rescued. Let me read this news report for you. This incident took place in Chennai. An abandoned newborn baby was rescued in Kanchipuram district of Tamil Nadu on Tuesday. A passerby rescued the baby who was lying in the bushes. The baby is said to be 2 months old. The passerby noticed the baby when he stopped to relieve himself. On Tuesday, Paranjoti, a resident of Chengalpet, was on his way to visit his relative. On the way to his relative place, Paranjoti stopped his four-wheeler to relieve himself. During this time, Paranjoti heard a child crying. Following this, Paranjoti and his driver started looking in nearby areas. According to the Telangana Times, the two men then found the child, who was wrapped in a piece of cloth and was lying in the bushes. The rescued baby was handed over to the policemen, and they were trying to identify the parents of the baby. Dear children, you might have read such kind of news reports in newspapers. Dear children, try to reflect on the following questions. What are the news reports about? Probably you might have understood the news reports are about the abandoned babies. In different parts of the country, the newborn babies are abandoned by the parents for several reasons. Dear children, try to think, how did the video make you feel? How did you feel when you watched the news reports about the abandoned babies? Do you notice any unusual things about the infants shown in the video? Yes, it's a very unusual sight. Usually the infants are to be grown up in the laps of the mothers or in the homes. But here, contrary to that, the children are left to the dustbins or to the bushes. It's a very unusual sight. Now the next question is, what happens to the infants when they are left in such places? When children are left in such places, some children they die, and some children are eaten up by some different animals, and sometimes luckily the infants, the abandoned babies, are also rescued by the local residents. So these are the things that happen to the children when they are abandoned to different places. Now based on this theme, we are going to discuss one important poem written by Dr. Surya Nasim. Before we discuss the poem Abondoned, let us look at the introduction to the poetess. Dr. Surya Nasim is the poetess of this poem Abondoned. She is a great poetess. Her poems are very simple and they are easy to read, and they are easier to understand. They do not have much complexities. So, as a reader you can easily understand the poetry of Dr. Surya Nasim. This poetry written by Surya Nasim does not have any fixed pattern. Okay? It has no fixed pattern and it does not follow any particular rule. Usually whenever a poetry is written, they follow some kind of rhyme and rhythm, they follow some kind of stanzaic structure, they follow some kind of meter, etc. But the poetry of Dr. Surya Nasim is very simple, it is easy to understand and it is easy to read. Even an ordinary reader can read and enjoy the theme of the poetry of Dr. Surya Nasim, and it does not have any fixed pattern. Okay. Now, let us discuss some more points about her poetry. So, English was one of her favorite subjects in school. Though by profession she is a doctor, English was one of her favorite subjects in school. Apart from English, she also used to be interested in studying the science. Okay. Her poems were nominated for the Booker Award in the year 2013. Many of the poems written by Dr. Surya Nasim were nominated for the prestigious Booker Award in the year 2013. So, this is about the poetess Dr. Surya Nasim. Now, let us see the different stanzas that are there in the poem, and let us also look at the summary and the central idea of the poem. So, the title of the poem is Abondoned, and now let us look at the first part of this poem. Let me read it out. Abandoned to the garbage bin with mosquitoes and insects eating its tiny fingers away. A little baby crying for help as foul smell comes into play, irradiating from disposed bacteria. This is the first part of the poem, children. First of all, let us see the meanings of some unfamiliar words from this part, and then let us look at the summary of this part. So, the first one is abandoned. What is the meaning of the word abandoned? Abandoned means left something or somebody forever. Usually, we abandon things which are useless to us. We abandon the things that are not at all required to us. Sometimes we also even abandon people whom we do not like, but it is very unusual. Abandoning people is very unusual. Okay. So, what is the meaning of the word abandoned? Abandoned means left something. Okay. Now, let us look at the meaning of another word, that is the garbage bin. Okay. Dear children, you might have used the garbage bin. You use the garbage bin in your day to day life. Okay. When there is some dust or some other thing in your house, you throw that into the dustbin. So, that dustbin is nothing but the garbage bin. Okay. Now, look at the meaning of another word, tiny. Tiny means very small. The opposite of this word tiny is huge. Huge means extremely big, unusually big, but here the meaning of tiny is very small. Okay. Now, look at the meaning of another word, that is irradiating. Irradiating means sending rays of light upon, or simply the meaning of this one is light up. You can see this in the picture, okay, along with the meaning. And the next one is foul smell. Foul smell means a very unpleasant smell or a bad smell. Okay. Usually when you pass by some the drainages, or when you pass by some dustbins or garbage bins, you find the smell foul or unpleasant or even bad. Okay. That kind of smell is known as foul smell. Okay. Now, children, look at the part again. Let me read out the first part again for you. Abandoned to the garbage bin with mosquitoes and insects eating its tiny fingers away, a little baby crying for help as foul smell comes into play, irradiating from disposed bacteria. In the first three lines of the poem, the poetess does not reveal what is abandoned. Okay. But when you go into the fourth line of the poem, we come to know that okay, the abandoned thing is nothing but a little baby. Okay. Now, let us look into the meaning of this particular stanza. Dear children, now let us look at the central idea or the summary of this first stanza. A little baby was left in the garbage bin by their parents for some unknown reason. We do not know the reason for certain. But the poetess has revealed that a little baby was abandoned to the garbage bin in the fourth line of the poem. So, in the initial 3 lines, we think that the abandoned thing is the thing that we do not require. But in the fourth line, she revealed that it is nothing but a little baby that was left in the garbage bin. Okay. So, the garbage bin was surrounded by mosquitoes and insects. So, as you know, this everywhere the garbage bins are usually surrounded by the mosquitoes and the insects. And the infant was crying. According to this part, the little baby was crying for help because the mosquitoes and the insects were eating the tiny fingers of the little baby. You can see that in the third, fourth and fifth stanzas. Okay. Little baby were crying for help as foul smells comes into the play. So, this thus the poetess also says that the foul smells that comes from the garbage bin fills with the disposed bacteria. It shows the outset of the poem, and this is the situation that exists at the beginning of the poem. The summary of the first part of the poem is that a little baby was left in the garbage bin by their parents for some unknown reason, and the mosquitoes and insects surround that particular garbage bin, and they are eating the tiny parts of the little baby. So, the little baby was crying for help, and the poetess also says that the foul smell that comes from the garbage bin fills with the disposed bacteria. This is the central idea of the first stanza. Now, dear children, based on this central idea, let us try to answer a few questions. First question is, who was abandoned in the poem? The answer is so simple, that is, a small baby or a newborn baby or an infant was abandoned in the poem according to the fourth line of the poem. Let us look at the second question. Can you guess who abandoned the baby? Yeah, the answer is very simple. The parents, it might be the parents that abandoned the small baby to the garbage bin. Why was the little baby crying? Okay, you know the answer. Yeah, the little baby was crying for help. Apart from that, mosquitoes and insects are eating the tiny fingers of the small baby. These are the two reasons that the child is crying for. What were the mosquitoes and insects doing? As it is stated in the poem, the mosquitoes and insects are eating the tiny fingers of the baby. These are the questions on the first part of the poem. Dear children, now let us go into the second part of the poem. Unheard shrieks of the baby's hysteria die in eerie silence of the night. An outcast of destiny, its labored breath racing in quick gasps, forced lonely like crab, with cyanosed lips, sea blue nose and fingertips. Its tattered and torn dirty wrap make it shiver in freezing grasp. In this stanza, the poetess talks about the physical features of the baby. Now, before we discuss the central idea of the poem, let us have a look at the meanings of the unfamiliar words. The first one is shriek. Shriek means a high pitched piercing cry. Usually, whenever children cry, we can say that is a shriek. And second one is hysteria. Hysteria is nothing but uncontrollable emotions. Usually, when someone irritates us, we get hysteria, we get some uncontrollable emotion. And the next one is an outcast of destiny. Here, this metaphor refers to the small baby. Next one is gasp. Gasp is nothing but to take a short, quick breath. Cyanosed lips refer to a deep greenish blue colored lips. And the next word is crab. It is nothing but solid waste. You can see that solid waste in the picture that is being displayed here. Eerie, eerie means causing a feeling of mystery and fear. Now, let us look at the summary of this second part. The little baby was crying with an uncontrollable emotion. You can see unheard shrieks of the baby's hysteria die in eerie silence of the night. It means that the little baby was crying with an uncontrollable emotion, but there was none to hear the loud, painful cry of the child. An outcast of destiny, its labored breath racing in quick gasps, forced lonely like crab. So here the poetess says, the poetess calls the baby an outcast of destiny because it was left to the garbage bin and as it was in its last stage of life. The baby was crying to take a labored breath with quick gasps. And in the next lines of the part, the poetess describes the physical features of the little baby. With cyanosed lips, sea blue nose and fingertips, its tattered and torn dirty wrap make it shiver in freezing grasp. Here in these lines, the poetess says that the baby had some deep greenish blue colored lips and sea blue colored nose and also the fingertips. The baby was shivering in cold and it was covered in a dirty and torn piece of cloth. So, this is the summary of the second part of the poem. In this second part, the poetess says that the little baby was crying, but no one was there to listen to that loud painful cry. And the poetess also describes the physical features of the little baby. And at the final part of the poem, the poetess says that the child was shivering in cold. This is the central idea of the second part of the poem. Now, let us look at some of the questions on this second part. What does the phrase an outcast of destiny refer to? So, here an outcast of destiny is the term used by the poetess to describe the plight, pathetic plight of the small baby who was abandoned to the garbage bin. The poetess says that the baby was left to the garbage bin and the baby was in its final stage of the life. Look at the second question. How does the poet describe the physical features of the baby? Here the poetess describes the physical features of the baby like the cyanosed lips, okay, and its fingertips and sea blue nose. Okay, these are some of the terms that the poetess has used to describe the physical features of the baby. Now, look at the last question. Why was the little baby shivering? Okay. So, the little baby was shivering because it was very cold and the baby was wrapped in a tattered cloth. This was the reason for her shivering. Okay. So, this is about the second part. Now, let us go to the next part of the poem. A filthy black cat edges onto the hold bin, searching for easy rats and find its food, tearing at babe's hair with their sharp teeth, gnawing at its ears to complete their feed. As a cat jumps in with a screeching meow, the rats let loose a clicking squeak. A bloody chaos ensues, the only sin of the infant being born. In this manner, the poet ends the poem. Now, before we discuss the summary of this part, let us look at the meanings of some unfamiliar words. First one is filthy. Filthy means extremely dirty. Usually, we use this word when we describe some unpleasant people or some unpleasant animals, filthy. The next word is edges. Edges is a verb, it means to move slowly. Okay, just you imagine the movement of a snail. Okay, it edges, it means it moves very slowly. Next one, look at the phrase it's a food. What does that phrase it's a food refer to? It refers to rats here. The meaning of its food is rats. And next one is gnawing. Here G is silent, gnawing. Gnawing means biting steadily at something. Usually if you bite something steadily or slowly, we call it gnawing. And the next one is let loose. Let loose means scattered away. Scattered away is the meaning of the phrase let loose. Ensues means happens. So, these are the meanings of some unfamiliar words from the part of this poem. Now, let us look at the summary of the last part. A filthy black cat edges onto the hold bin. So, in these two lines the poetess says that an ugly black cat moved slowly to the garbage bin, okay, searching for easy rats and finds its food. So, why did the cat come to that garbage bin. The ugly black cat was searching for the rats, and the rats that could be caught easily. That is why she has used the term easy rats. Easy rats means the rats that could be caught easily by the cat, and finds its food tearing at the babe's ear with their sharp teeth. Now, the cat found that some rats were tearing at the baby's hair with their sharp teeth. The rats are biting steadily some parts of the baby's hair, gnawing at its ears to complete their feed. So, the rats are trying to complete their feed, and they are biting the head of that small baby. As the cat jumps in with a screeching meow, the rats let loose. So, when they saw the cat, when the rats saw the cat, those rats scattered, leaving the baby there itself. A clicking squeak, a bloody chaos ensues. So, what happens as a result of this cat's jumping? The cat's jumping into the garbage bin and the rats letting loose causes a bloody chaos. Okay, there happens a bloody chaos as a result of the cats jumping in and the rats letting loose. The only sin of the infant being born, and the poetess concludes with a strong remark saying that the sin of the baby is just being born as a human being. So, this is the powerful remark, or this is the powerful statement that the poetess has used to end this particular poem. The baby has not done any sin. The only sin that the baby did was being born as a human being. This is the theme and central idea of the poem. So, she says that it is not the sin of the small infant, it is the sin of the human beings to abandon small babies to the garbage bins. So, this is about the gist of the poem and the summary of the poem. Now, let us look at some questions based on this part. What is the meaning of the phrase easy rats? So, in this poem, the poetess has used one phrase, that is easy rats. What is the meaning of the phrase easy rats? The meaning of the phrase easy rats means the rats that could be caught easily. That is the meaning of that particular phrase. Look at the second question now. What led to a bloody chaos at the end of the poem? So, here the cats jumping into the garbage bin and the rats letting loose, it had caused the bloody chaos. So, whenever the rats saw the cat jumping in, they let loose, they scattered away. So, these two actions created a bloody chaos. And look at the last question. Why did the rats leave the baby? The rats left the baby because they had seen a cat jumped into that garbage bin. Okay. So, this is about the third part of the poem, and with this we have completed the parts, the summary of the three parts of the poem. Now, let us look at some figures of speech that have been used in this poem. Dear children, look at one particular line that has been used in the poem. Forced lonely like crab. So, here the child is compared to a crab. The abandoned child has been compared to a crab with the help of one word, that is like. So, what do you call such comparison? Such comparison is called a simile. Similes have been used in this poem. Look at the line again. Forced like lonely crab. Here the baby was left to the garbage bin as we leave solid waste. So, here the baby who was abandoned to the garbage bin was compared to the crab, that is a solid waste. In order to make this comparison, the word like is used. Such a kind of comparison is called a simile. Now, let us look at the meaning of the figure of speech simile. A simile is a figure of speech which compares two essentially unlike things in an interesting way. If two different things are compared in an interesting way, using the words like, as or so, we call it a simile. So, two important things are there in the meaning of a simile. First one is two essentially different things are compared. For that comparison, we use the words like, as or so. Look at this example. Our soldiers are as brave as a lion. Here soldiers are compared to a lion. Here soldiers are different, they are human beings and lion is an animal. So, they are two different things, but those two different things have a common quality in them. That common quality is bravery. So, the bravery is compared using the word as here. That is why we call it a simile. Our soldiers are as brave as a lion, it is a simile. Look at the second example, she is like an angel. Here she, a woman, is compared to an angel. So, two are different things, but those two different things have a common quality in them. That common quality is nothing but beauty. So, the common quality is beauty and that is compared using the word like. So, we call it a simile. So, if we compare two essentially unlike thing using the words like or as or so, we call it a simile. Now, try to identify some other similes from the poem. Now, let us look at one more thing, an outcast of destiny. So, here in this poem, the baby was described as an outcast of destiny. This comparison or this description is done without using the words like, as or so. Without using the words like, as or so, the baby is compared as an outcast of destiny. Such a kind of comparison is known as a metaphor. So, what is a metaphor? A metaphor is also just like a simile, but here in the comparison we do not use the words like, as or so. This is called a metaphor. Look at the example. The camel is the sheep of the desert. Here two different things, one is an animal and second one is the sheep. These two things are compared without using the words like or as. So, we call it a metaphor. The camel is the sheep of the desert. Look at the second example. Life is a dream. Life is different, a dream is different, but the common quality in them is being compared, and in this comparison we have not used any word like or as. So, we call this one as a metaphor. This is the second figure of speech that is used in the poem, and try to identify some other metaphors used in that particular poem. And look at one more figure of speech. Some words have been used there like shrieks, screeching meow, clicking squeak. Such expressions resemble the sounds made by animals or human beings. For example, look at the word shriek. The word shriek resembles the sound, and here screeching meow also resembles the sound, and clicking squeak also resembles the sound. Such a kind of expressions are known as onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is a figure of speech in which the formation of a name is done by imitating the natural sound that is associated with the object. For example, the word quack resembles the sound made by the duck. So, there is a close resemblance between the sound and the word. That is why we call an onomatopoeia. For example, look at the sound hiss. Hiss is the word hiss is formed by referring to the sound made by the snakes. So, the word hiss is an example for the word onomatopoeia. That is the third figure of speech that has been used in the poem. These are the three onomatopic expressions. Okay, children, these are the three figures of speech that have been used in the poem. Finally, let us look at the central idea in brief. The gist of the poem is Abondoned is a poem written by Dr. Surya Nasim. It is a poem about a baby who was abandoned to the garbage bin. It is a heart-rending poem about the pathetic conditions of the babies abandoned by their parents. The poetess succeeds in describing the physical features of the young child, the surroundings of the garbage bin, and how insects, cat, rats cause chaos that takes the life of the abandoned infant. Through the readers, finally, the poetess asks the humanity, what is the sin of the infant? At the end of the poem, she asks the humanity, what was the sin done by that particular infant? This is the gist of the poem. Dear children, try to answer the following questions and write the answers in your notebooks. These are the questions for comprehension. Why do people abandon infants? There are several reasons. Try to mention a few reasons for abandoning the infants. The second question is, why are the shrieks of baby unheard? According to the poem, mention the reason. Comment on the expression, the only sin of the infant is being born. And the last question is, mention any 2 ways to educate people not to abandon infants. Dear children, try to answer these questions and write the answers in your notebooks. This is the end of the poem Abondoned. I hope you have understood everything in detail. Thank you.
ఆ చదువులమ్మ నేరుగా